Hello and welcome to this demo video. Before we get started, I'd just like to explain to you a few things which will relate to all of the basic range spreadsheets. Number one, there is a key on the intro and setup tab of all of the spreadsheets showing what the different color headers mean. The blue headers mean that the cell's formulated, so it's locked and you can't change it. The yellow headers are where you can input data, and occasionally there might be some gray headers, which is just a different kind of data input, but we'll include instructions as and when that happens. The other thing that you can be aware of is there are ways in which you can damage the spreadsheet. So please do take a look at the link where you see this image, which will take you to a web page to show you how to better preserve your spreadsheet. Please feel free to keep a blank version of the spreadsheet somewhere, so that if you do mess up a spreadsheet that you're using, you can in fact just open a new one, a blank one. And some of the spreadsheets only last for a year, and then you've got a blank one to start the following year. So do keep a blank copy as a backup somewhere. And lastly, wherever you see this image, you can click on it. It'll take you back to the store where you purchased this product to see if you've got anything, any more products. One last thing, to see a demo video, you can click on this on a link that looks like this in order to go to the demo video, but that'll take you to the most recent demo. If in fact we've done upgrades and you're using an older version and you'd like to see the demo relating to your version, then do click on the watch on YouTube link, which will take you to that specific video on YouTube. So I think that's all you need to know. So without further ado, let's move on to this demo video. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to the demo video for the basic sole trader accounts spreadsheet. This spreadsheet's come about because I've had a few requests from sole traders saying, do I have something for them? Very, very simple kind of spreadsheet to manage their accounts, just to kind of show what's come in, what's gone out, so they can use it towards a tax return at the end of the year. Now, I'm not a sole trader, so I've never done this before. But I have spoken to an accountant just to double check what we've done in that, and then if it's correct, and they've said yes. So this is a very, very basic version, like bookkeeping solution, if you will, for your accounts if you are a sole trader. So let me just show you how it works. It's very, very straightforward to use. As I said, it's a very basic version. So if you want anything more complicated, please come and chat to me. Otherwise, if you want something really, really simple, this should do the job. What it does, you can put in the start date of the financial year. You can also put in the tax rate. This doesn't necessarily need to be the tax rate, but it does need to be the, you can put down what you want to set aside. So you may find tax might be a certain percentage, but you may want to set aside a little bit more. If that's the case, then put the percentage you want to set aside, because what the spreadsheet will then do is it'll track how much money you need to have aside at any given point as you go along. So if you don't necessarily need to put the exact tax rate, you can put a higher rate if you want to set more money aside. It will still work out the money in and money out values that you need to put into your tax return, but at least you'll have more money set aside if that's in fact what you want to do. Put in the opening bank balance. You only need put in the opening bank balance if you are actually going, if you're actually using a bank account which is specifically set aside for the business, and you want to reconcile what's gone onto the spreadsheet with your bank account. If you're using a bank account, your normal bank account, and you don't want to reconcile, then just leave that cell blank, because then it won't activate the bank totals on the other page. But if you do want to monitor your bank account and see and just double check that your bank account reconciles with what the spreadsheet says, then you can put in the opening bank balance and it'll keep a running total. Once you put in your start date, it should show you your start and end date for the period. If this doesn't show here, then you put something wrong in it at your start date, and that's all you need to set up. The only other thing you need to do, put in your categories. So you can put in the categories for all of your income and expense, and then whatever you put here, there's space for 50 of them. Whatever you put in here, you'll be able to select on the other page these categories in order to break it down later on. Just make sure you don't have any duplicates in here, because if you put duplicates in, it'll just duplicate in the report and it'll double up the figures. So don't put any duplicates in, but yeah, put in your categories here for both sales and expenses. Then the last thing is, and this is where you need to talk to your accountant. I don't know what's supposed to be included and excluded, but if there is an entire category that needs to be excluded from tax point of view, So let's just say, for example, donations, you want to give a donation, but the donations you still have to pay tax on them, for example, then all you do is you simply select that cross for that particular category. And what that will do on the spreadsheet is every time you assign something to that particular category, it won't show up. It won't include those values in the tax figures. So you can ignore entire categories here at the beginning from a tax point of view if you want to, but just obviously, as I said, make sure from your accountant that you're doing the right thing there. Once you've set it up, you can then move on to the actual main data entry tab, and I've just filled in a whole bunch of stuff here. But what you do then is you can fill in the date. Now, some people get confused by the date because they're not sure whether it's into day then month or month then day or whatever. As a general rule in Excel, if you put 1st of January like that, so actually type in 1 space Jan and click enter, it will convert it to a date. So it'll convert it to whatever the date format is. So if you're not sure which round to put it, just type it in 1 space Jan. It obviously assumes that that 1 Jan is the year that you're entering, and then enter, and it will convert it to a date. As you can see, when I did that, let's just put in the 31st of March again. As you can see, as I did that, these cells turned yellow because they want you to fill something in. So you must select a category. These categories that you select are the ones that you put on your intro and setup tab. You can put in a description. You don't have to. You can put an invoice or receipt number if you want to. You don't have to. But you do need to put in either an expense or an income. So if I select this, for example, as advertising marketing, if I put in an expense of £30, then that one disappears as well, because then it knows it's an expense. If I were to put that in instead of advertising and marketing as sales, and I put in £50 there, then as you can see, they both disappear because you only need to put in one, but they'll both turn yellow to tell you need to put in something. So you need to make sure that you fill up fill in any yellow cells. The last thing that you can do is you can come here and you can actually override the tax on any given line. So I know you did at the beginning with the categories, but let's just say, for example, I don't know, there's some obscure circumstance where you've categorized it as something, but there's one particular one that you want to categorize as that, but this particular one does not go towards tax. You can come to each individual line and you can override it. Now you can override it either way. So if it's a category that has been assigned not to be for tax, then what will happen is these cells here will be blank. These will be blank here if it's not going through to tax, because all these values are the ones that have been added up for tax purposes. So if you've said a particular category doesn't go to tax, it'll be blank here. So if you look here and it's blank and you go, actually, yes, I did say that category shouldn't be assigned to tax, but this time I want it assigned, you can simply come here and override it with yes or no. So if you want to include it, click here. If you don't want to include it, click there. So if I don't want to include it, you see it removes it from the tax. And if I do want to do it, it puts it in. Now it was already in, but if I go back here, for example, and let's just say bank charges and interest, I say, no, that's not eligible for tax. If I come here, you'll see that's not eligible for tax because it was one of those categories. But I can always come back here and say, click yes, yes, and then it will actually add it on. So you can come and do it on a granular level here per entry, should you want to. But if you want to do it as for the entire category, you can do that on the intro and setup tab. And that's it. Your totals at the top here, these are the totals, expense and income as far as tax is concerned. That's what your bank balance should be. If you put a bank balance in, these are the totals here that you've typed in, just ignoring the tax, just all these income and expenses. That's what you should have set aside for tax. And that is the difference between these two. So you've got, you've got all those totals at the top. You also have them on the report tab. So if you go to the report tab, you can see here that you've got all of these totals. The green one are the ones used to use for tax calculations. At the moment, they're the same. But if I went here, for example, and said, let's do hardware assets, for example, and say those aren't included in tax. Now, when we go to the report, you'll see that the income is the same, but the expenses are very different. So you can see there that there's a difference now. So these would be the totals that you would then submit for your tax, total expenses, total income. It shows you the difference. It shows you what you should have set aside for tax, and it shows you what rate you're using. And then these totals at the bottom here are the grand total. So they're ignoring what you said isn't for tax. So it just takes all the figures. This here shows your income and expense per calendar month. So if you start partway through the month, you may find that the first and last month are a bit lower, but those will take show your expense and income. And this, again, this is everything, not just the taxable income. Your changes to your account per month, these are all in the positive, but if you did have a month where your expenses outweighed your income, this would then be a negative value. So you'll see that turn red and be a negative value. So this is basically the difference each month. And then last but not least, here are the values, the categories that you've got that you've assigned. These are the total expenses per category. This is the total income per category. These are the taxable expenses per category, taxable income per category, and the percentage of the taxable expense. So you can see here, it uses this taxable expense column. But what it does here is it says 35.72% of my taxable income, taxable expenses, sorry, are professional fees. So this just gives a breakdown of where your money is going, essentially. And then this shows what effect that has on the tax owing. So obviously an income would be a positive effect. It means you're paying tax, and an expense would be a negative effect, saying that that's coming off the tax that you owe. So that's just a breakdown of all the different categories. So this final tab updates automatically when you fill in each of these lines, each time you fill in an income or expense, and just make sure that you set it up correctly, going through with an accountant what you can ignore for tax and which particular lines you can ignore for tax. And then what I would suggest doing, if you have an accountant, is actually sending in the spreadsheet at the end of the year so they can have a look at it and see what you've ignored and what you've actually done. And I think this will lay it out quite nicely for them. So that's that. If you are a sole trader, if this makes sense to you, it's great. If you're looking at this saying, well, that's great, but I wanted to do more, then get hold of me and let's have a chat about that. But if this works for you, then yeah, do get hold of it. And I wish you all the best with your business. Thank you very much and goodbye.